Good afternoon from India, and I'm sure it is good evening in South Korea. It's a wonderful occasion that the Gandhi Cultural Community of Korea and the Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti, we have joined hands together to find and see and brainstorm on how we can promote Gandhian ideas and Gandhian values in South Korea. It is such an important thing in today's world where so much of need for non-violent action and non-violence in every walk of life, whether at the individual level, whether at the level of the families, institutions, and at the level of a global and the level of the global community. What is important today is to promote a global human community which will come together with a string of solidarity, and especially in the context of the pandemic situation that we are going on and other geopolitical issues that are there. Gandhi offers a great answer to all these ideas. In fact, for all the esteemed audience here, let me share with you just an hour back, I just finished a session with a university in Bangladesh, and we had some speakers from Philippines and Thailand. And I found that how one of the aspects that we are talking about with the Bangladesh university and the Filipino university was on how to promote the Gandhian model of nonviolent communication. And I was astounded by the fact that how seriously all these countries have taken, and the Filipino professor was talking about the Gandhian values and ideas, which actually underlines how important and relevant it is in all the societies, and it is a universal point. Some time back, I was reading a very interesting point by Professor Paul F. Power from the University of Cincinnati, and who has actually developed this Gandhian model of international relations. And he talks about how the interstate relationships needs to be based on domestic values and institutions, and social harmony is basic to this nature. So today's session is going to be very, very interesting, because how we can promote the whole universal values and the multifarious and pluralistic values of Mahatma Gandhi in the Korean society. That is something very interesting we are going to do. And we are very, very honored that Dr. Lakhvinder Singh ji, who has so kindly taken the initiative to promote this whole idea. We are all ready to give ideas and work further to promote some of these values. As I said, we have a very esteemed panel today for the program for this dialogue that we are talking about. We have Professor Swaran Singh from the Jawaharlal Nehru University. We have Mr. Robin Sachdeva, who is the president of the Imagine India Institute and the founder of the Lemonade Party India. We have Professor Shin John Sham, who is a former professor and a Gandhian by heart and an environmentalist in South Korea. We have Professor Vithya Jain, who is a very senior Gandhian scholar, and she's also with the International Peace Research Association. We have Dr. Ari Bloach, who is from the producer and director of the Zoomolog, founding member. From Israel, we have Mr. Kim Shelo Ho, also from the Asian Institute, Korea. And of course, at the end, we will be summing up Professor Dr. Lakhvinder Singh, who is the president of the Gandhian community in Korea. So we really look forward to some very, very intense discussion on how we are going to ingrain and instill the Gandhian values at the individual level, at the level of the families, where worldwide we find that because of the extreme run for materialistic goals, the family values are somehow declining in a big way. Then at the institutional levels, and finally at a level of the geopolitical atmosphere that we are there in this world today. So to start with, we will be, as Dr. Lakhvinder Singh pointed out, that Professor Swaran Singh will be joining us a little later.
He has joined us.
He has joined us?
Yes.
Okay. So I think then we start with Professor Swaran Singh himself. And Professor Swaran Singh is the professor and chairman of the Center for International Politics, Organization and Disarmament, School of International Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is also the president of the Asia Scholars, and also he is Asia-wide Network and the General Secretary of the Indian Congress of Asian and Pacific Studies. He is a very distinguished professor and he's been an advisory member of the Communities Without Border. He's also with the Institute of National Security Studies, Sri Lanka, Colombo, and adjunct senior fellow, China, India, the Charhar Institute, Beijing, and the visiting professor of China, West Normal University. So I think we will be able to, all of us are going to benefit from his profound understanding of the thing and how Gandhian values are so important in the current geopolitical situation. And also, most importantly, what could the Gandhi community, South Korea, do to promote Gandhian ideas in the country of South Korea? Professor Swaran Singh, the floor is all yours, please.
Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity to be part of this very interesting discussion today. In fact, the way some of these semantics appear during our conversations, for example, this is a collaboration between Gandhian community, cultural community in Korea, in South Korea. I think that's itself a reflection of the mindset of looking at yourself as a cultural community rather than as an association or organization. And of course, working together with the Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Smriti from New Delhi. It's a great initiative by Professor Lakhvinder Singh and other colleagues of his. Likewise, I think the title of today's discussion about promoting Gandhian values and philosophy in South Korea, that itself speaks about how the very formidable and fundamental challenge, which is where Gandhi comes to us as a savior, is the hit on basic human values that the world is facing today. With enormous onslaught of technology, of tensions between nation states, of other kind of threats which were never perceived of before, whether it is pandemics or human trafficking or drug trafficking, or you could talk about terrorism, for example. All of these perhaps definitely underline the relevance of Gandhi. But I think the way we have kind of created this the title of discussion of Gandhian values and philosophy reflects how intense and deep discussion we are hoping to have in today's meeting. And I am extremely honored to be part of this discussion and sit together with very, very eminent scholars and Gandhians, of course. And let me just say the first revelation to me personally was when I received this invitation to speak on this platform, is to begin to look at South Korea's interest in Gandhi. And I want to also thank you sincerely for awakening me to South Korea or Korea's own cultural traditions of peace and their consciousness and engagement with Gandhi and his ideas. Your invitation allowed me to become a little more aware of not only how great names like Ban Ki-moon or President Moon Jae-in have used Gandhi in their speeches, but how experts have done serious work and published articles in journals, in Korean journals, exploring and examining Gandhi. And that was a very good feeling that I was lucky to be part of this discussion, that I came to be a little more aware of Korea's own cultural traditions of peace, Korea's cultural traditions, even during the liberation struggle against Japanese. There was a whole group of people who felt inspired by Gandhi. Of course, we in India talk of Gandhi as a global citizen, and of course, multiple freedom struggles and iconic leaders were influenced by Gandhi, no doubt. But I think to me, as one individual, the revelations of the connection with Korea and South Korea, and how several South Korean institutions are promoting peace studies was interesting. And then the link, of course, to a very large number of Korean citizens who are Buddhists. And that link to India again becomes very interesting. So I think it's a great revelation to me to be part of this discussion. And therefore, develop a kind of a sense of linking Gandhi to Korea itself. And then, of course, linking Gandhi to today's challenges that we face. The first challenge that I wish to underline is the very existential challenge. Shall we survive as a human civilization if we continue to pursue the roadmaps that human civilization has followed and continues to follow? You can notice that among several other metaphors becoming very, very popular in today's narratives, sustainability has become very, very significant challenge. Can we sustain things that world is pursuing? And there could not be any better scholar, philosopher, icon, saint to engage than Gandhi. Gandhi has so much to share with us about his everyday experience to his overarching philosophy of the world. Whether you talk about his detailed discussions in his autobiography about dietary, what should one be eating on everyday basis? How can one control diet to control disease? And then, of course, extension of that, a very revolutionary idea of fasting. Fasting for very interesting reasons, not as a matter of protest, as we sometimes understand, but with much pious, much spiritual focus on cleansing one's own soul, as Gandhi says, but also influencing the soul of your adversaries. So very, very interesting way of looking at how a simple method of controlling one's diet can not only take care of diseases, and again, when you talk of sustainability, we understand that pandemics are becoming an enormous challenge. Last 20 years, if you see whether it is Zika or Ebola or SARS or H1N1, one after another, and now, of course, the coronavirus, is a reflection that in future, pandemics are going to be something the world will continue to face. They are not going to disappear. It's not like next pandemic will happen after 100 years. The last 20 years do not show that. And how clearly lessons lie in Gandhian values and philosophy of not eating just because we can afford things, but eating in terms of ensuring that everyone on this planet should be able to eat and everyone on this planet should be able to sustain good health. So Gandhian values of everyday life are very significant that can address challenges of sustainability of village republics. He does not like heavy industries. We are going back to now the small and micro industrial enterprises, at least in India and many other countries, cottage industries, saving the environment. In fact, he absolutely is uncomfortable with Marxism, but also shares many things that are common to Marxist philosophy and Gandhian philosophy. The alienation of artisan from his product is very critical to Gandhi. The whole industrialization is alienation, and how you see what kind of diseases are increasing in the world. Depression is increasing around the world. Diabetes is increasing in the world because we are increasingly disconnected from things that we do. We are not feeling connected with things that we are doing, whether we are doing this discussion here or whether we are producing a kind of artifact or innovating something new. The connection of creator and creation is diminishing over a period of time. And Gandhi believes that individuality is where creativity lies. And therefore, he talks of the least state. Another very important idea of Gandhi, which is recently in debate, again, as part of climate change mitigation, adaptation, and sustainability, is his idea of trusteeship. How revolutionary that idea is, that the whole Western idea of mixing your capabilities to nature or Mother Earth around us creates private property. The idea of private property is only in the Occident, not in the Orient. Gandhi says that we cannot be the owners. That is counterintuitive. That is a contradiction in terms. Because even my physique is a creation of my parents. So is my knowledge, creation of my society, my universities, my students. So if everything I am only taking from others, then I cannot be the owner. I can only be the trustee of whatever I have. And that's a very revolutionary idea he's presenting, which is closer to Marxism, that everyone contributes according to their capacities and takes according to their needs. But of course, Marxism talks of violence, which is antithesis of Gandhi. There's no class struggle for Gandhi. There are no classes for Gandhi. So trusteeship is another revolutionary idea, which I think holds great value for us today. Because if we are only trustees, then we have to also be careful, how do we pass it on to the future generations? The globe today, the global debates are today talking of what kind of earth we are going to leave for future generations. The moment you remove sense of ownership and treat yourself as a trustee of a product or body of knowledge, then that means you immediately become conscious of this is what you have inherited, you have kept it properly, and then this is how you will pass on to the future generations. How will you do that? I'm just picking up things that, Gandhi is, as you know, you could continuously study and speak and discuss for lifetime. I'm just nitpicking few things. Another very interesting idea of Gandhi is Gandhi talks of not sovereign states, but sovereign citizens. And we notice today that with empowerment of information and communication technologies, each of us, each citizen is so much empowered in terms of connecting with the rest of the world, communicating with the rest of the world, knowing about the rest of the world. Of course, sometimes it also leads to stereotypes and caricaturing of things. But that kind of access was never available in human civilization. Sometimes I tell my young students that the information that they can scroll on their phone screen in 1 minute would have taken their grandpa maybe 10 to 15 years to collate and collect. Citizens today are enormously empowered, and that was the vision that Gandhi already had. Gandhi thought of sovereign citizens, where citizens have sufficient autonomy to decide what they wish to do and how they wish to really achieve their potential. And he wanted to focus, therefore, on creating the whole world as world of Satyagrahas. And he says very interestingly that just like you train very rigorously your soldiers that will fight your war, which is a violent war, you need to as much rigorously train your non-violent soldiers, which is Satyagrahas. So it is not something that is an option for the weak, as he says, it is an option for the strong. And if you look around us, Gandhi also talks of structural violence, which people like Johann Galtung have done enormous work on. There is so much violence around our civilization, our human society, which is constantly increasing. And that makes Gandhian values again very, very significant, that if we begin to learn in our reflex action, in our natural behavior, that violence is not an option, violence is not a feasible option, because violence only generates more violence. As we say popularly, an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. So how to train individuals to become Satyagrahis? And then, of course, Satyagrahis would work for Sarvodaya, which is rise of all, not rise of few. Again, that is again a major challenge. The kind of capitalism that we are noticing around us, the kind of news you get in middle of pandemic, that rich people are becoming more rich and poor are becoming poorer. Nations have now faced larger number of people who are described as poor, or in India we call it below the poverty line. how ageless, timeless values Gandhi wants to inculcate in himself, to present himself as an example and not simply preach things and create things that I think would be sustainable, which is the fundamental challenge to us today, whether it is protecting environment, whether it is protecting ourselves from enormous stress and violence, whether it is giving us freedom to achieve our potential. In all various fields where we find that humanity is facing enormous challenge today, return to Gandhism, I think, is increasingly being recognized. And we notice United Nations itself is increasingly using some of the Gandhian values and philosophy. Various universities around the world are increasingly teaching now Gandhian studies and Gandhian philosophy increasingly. So I'm greatly happy to see that Professor Lakhvinder Singh is part of that initiative in Korea, where the focus is in building this Gandhian cultural community in South Korea. And then I think that really should not just make us much more aware, because Korean perspectives on Gandhi will make us learn definitely new things that maybe we in India do not see. Maybe we breathe Gandhi as air without being fully aware of what is totality of Gandhi. So I look forward to this initiative leading to some very interesting works in the coming days of giving us new interpretations and new ideas about how Korean scholars or Indian scholars in Korea look at Gandhi. And I'm looking forward even now to listen to other panelists and learn from this discussion. In case there are any questions or comments in my way, then I will be happy to try to respond to them. But I want to sincerely thank all of you to allow me to speak first, and of course make me part of this discussion. And I'll be delighted in future if I can contribute in any way to promotion of this Gandhian cultural community initiative in South Korea. With that, and with my very sincere thanks, I revert it back to the host of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. It was very, very insightful points that you could flag off. And I think all our speakers in this whole dialogue will come up with something very, very concrete. In fact, our own experience here at Gandhi Smriti, as you pointed out, more and more universities. In fact, I will like to use the term quote unquote madness for so many, on the Gandhian values. And for the last more than 1 year, we have been doing with such a huge number of universities all across the world, right from say Malawi to Uganda to Kyrgyzstan, Indonesia. So a lot of interest that is there, and that is the need of the hour, because everyone feels that there is so much of turmoil within and also turmoil outside. So how we promote a balance. Without wasting much time, we go to the next panelist. As we all remember, this is a dialogue, and at the end we would like to have a yes, please. Yes, sir.
As you know, the Professor Swaran Singh has to leave. So if anybody has a question, he can ask now.
Okay. Sure. Definitely. Yes, in case anyone has some question for Professor Swaran Singh, because he has to go for a television program, so he will have to leave. So any questions for Professor Singh? Anyway.
So I have one question, practical question.
Yes, please.
So, as you know, in Korea, there's too much focus on economic growth, but all the spiritual growth, the spiritual balance has been completely ignored. So what kind of practical advice you would like to give to Koreans to refocus on a spiritual part of the human development? What Gandhiji said. So what can be done now? Practically we can do now.
Thank you, Professor Singh. The practical initiative you're already taking, but I think world over, it has been seen that countries like South Korea, which has been an enormous economic miracle, or China, which has been another larger size economic miracle, are particularly the countries that have become far more conscious of values. Because once your basic material requirements begin to be fulfilled and you feel enriched materially, humans immediately turn to finding more cognitive satisfaction, engaging with ideas. And we have seen that as an enormous challenge in all rapidly developing societies in Asia, Japan, China, now Korea, that rapid development materially leads them very directly in search of values that they hold very dear. And when the values is in question and are being sort of looked for, then Korea's own traditions of whether it is Buddhism, which I'm told about 1/3 of South Korea is Buddhist, or it is their own traditions of peace in Korea, or their liberation struggle narratives on non-violent struggle in Korea, or the contemporary peace studies in Korea, would definitely go on increasing. In fact, I understand that, it could also be related to the fact that because Korea saw very, very rapid economic development, is why recently, I feel proud that Gandhi has become much more engaged icon from India with Korea. I remember for a long time, it was India's great poet Ravindranath Tagore that was very famous in Korea. But we saw that in 2014 in Busan, Gandhi's bust was inaugurated there, and that led to a lot of discussions during that period of time. And more recently, in February of 2019, another bust was inaugurated in Seoul, in Yonsei University. So in that sense, one can notice that Korea and Korean society, and you remember, Moon Jae-in calls Gandhi as a compass for inter-Korean relations, for peace on Korean Peninsula. So we notice that their engagement with their own peace traditions, their own values, and therefore through that lens with Gandhi has seen a sudden upsurge in last about 10 years or so. And that is a reflection that, this is definitely going to connect India and South Korea much more closer, because trade relations, incidentally, trade is showing certain negative growth lately. But trade relations are not the ones that really cement relations. Cultural relations, spiritual relations, intersocietal relations, people to people. All countries, when they have good relations, they want to promote people to people relations. So Gandhi's increasing awareness in South Korea, to me, is a reflection on both Gandhi becoming relevant at global level, but also yearning of South Koreans beyond material success into spiritual depth of themselves, and from that depth connecting with other similar civilizations. And I'm sure Gandhi Darshan Smriti is extremely active in these engagements with you, and the fact they are doing this joint event with you is a reflection of enormous enthusiasm. And it's an honor for India if other countries wish to engage some of the great iconic figures from India, and their contributions bring us together. So, to me, practical initiatives that you asked me are already happening. And because they're happening out of the result of a groundswell for that demand, that yearning, they will continuously expand. And I think we will see India, South Korea coming closer in coming times. I think Professor Mishra had something to say also.
It's always a pleasure listening to Professor Swaran Singh's, the persuasive approach and the Gandhian. My point is, Professor Swaran, how do you look at, the inculcation of Gandhian idea vis-a-vis climate change? Can Asia, Africa, parts of Europe, they can, concretely move forward for this climate change? That's what interests me.
Professor Mishra is himself aware of these issues, but let me just very briefly mention the fact that Gandhi used to build ashrams one after another, whether in South Africa or in India, is a reflection of what kind of ashrams he wanted to build, which were closest to nature and self-sustaining, and which is a reflection of how climate change can be addressed. The problems of climate change are a result of what Gandhi would call greed of human civilization, excessive consumption. And Gandhi was completely against. Look at any of his ashrams and the routine that he builds in those ashrams, the kind of clothing, food, everything, even the teaching techniques are an example of something that perhaps world is gradually awakening up to as a solution to our climate change threats, which are becoming existential challenge to us. So Gandhi lived by example, as all of us know. And his various ashrams that he has set up are ideal model to see how best we can see a particular model can protect us from the climate change threats. And the mention that you made of Africa and Asia also is very interesting, because Asia and Africa have had those traditions, ancient traditions, where people have lived very close to Mother Nature. In fact, many experts describe as to that is why these societies missed the bus of industrial revolution, because this was not part of their civilizational DNA. They wanted to stay closer to Mother Nature. It is only out of colonialism that they were exposed to industrialization, urbanizations. And therefore, your connection that Professor Mishra you made with India and Africa is very interesting and relevant, therefore. And last 10 seconds, one last point. Next 50 years, both the population explosion and economic growth explosion is going to happen in Africa. And if we can protect Africa from 19th century industrial revolution aping of that model, we will be doing a great justice to humanity in that sense. And I think this becomes a responsibility of all of us who are here. People like me have some interest in Gandhi, but some of you are Gandhian experts, some of you are Gandhians yourself. This puts onus on us perhaps to then bring that to light, that as there is going to be enormous awakening and explosion of growth in Africa in coming 50 to 60 years before it tapers down, what kind of model we want to see being replicated in those countries and cities and villages. So in that sense, I think this connection across the world of people like us, some of you are much more intensely involved than I am. So I'm lucky to be part of this discussion today. I think there is an opportunity here, that there's an opportunity for all of us to make our little contributions to how all the challenges. In fact, I want to close by saying, put your hand on heart and think of any 10 challenges that humanity is facing. Gandhi will be relevant for all 10 of those. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Swaran Singh. It was very, very enlightening listening to you. Now, part of the second speaker for the panel is Dr. Radicalinder Sachdeva, who is the president of the Imagine India Institute. He is an accomplished geopolitical strategist, and he was honored by the ambassador, His Excellency, the ambassador of Korea to India on the National Day of Korea for efforts made by his institute over the last 5 years that resulted in the issue of commemorative stamp in honor of Queen Hyo Wang Ok by the government of India. Also, the Imagine India Institute has arranged about 24 business political delegations and conferences between Korea and India in the past 10 years. So he is someone who is known to Korea in a big way, and I think he will have some really good, insightful ideas to share with us, practical ideas on how the Gandhian cultural community could strengthen and promote those Gandhian values and philosophy in South Korea. Dr. Radicalinder Sachdeva, please.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you so much to the organizers, Professor Lakhvinder Singh, for arranging this, discussion, brainstorming, even one could say. And it really is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be in the company of such brilliant minds, scholars, as Dr. Swaran Singh said, that some are Gandhians themselves or experts on Gandhi, right? So it's indeed a pleasure and an honor to be in this company. I will actually dig into some aspects. I will lay out a little background, and then probably I'll come to some, maybe some practical steps that I think or we think are happening and are the need of the hour in today's day. Firstly, in the background, you see, if we step back, probably the world is really in a new era, the start of a new era. We've had a pandemic, which was once in 100 years a pandemic for the first time, right? Also, right now in geopolitics, there is a once in 100 years shift happening, an existing empire, America, let's say for the last 100 years, and a rising empire, China, is now creating friction between the two. This is also once in 100 years thing happening. And the third thing which is happening is maybe once, the first time ever on planet Earth in 10,000 years or whatever, and that is the reality of climate change. Climate change is suddenly on our doorsteps. It is flooding our cities, our homes. Climate change is no longer, a vague, soft something out there, right? So these are three trends which have converged. A once in 100 years pandemic, a once in 100 years geopolitical frictions, and once in a 10,000 year climate realization. So right now, in a sense, we are in year zero of the new post-COVID era. So therefore, it becomes even more important while the world is going into a reset, a reboot. A lot of reflection, introspection is happening amongst nations, in homes, in families, and individuals. Last 2 years, people have been sitting home mostly, oftentimes even working from home. And you are thinking that, where is life taking me and how and what, right? So there's a lot of reflection also going on. So this is an amazing, a unique time in world history where we are right now. Now, that's one. Second, in this time, what is happening, what we are seeing is that, of course, we are seeing conflicts and stress. Conflicts within the mind, conflicts between nations, stress in the mind. There's a lot of stress going on in this world, both between nations, between societies, and inside an individual's mind. And also coupled with it, especially for the newer generations, it seems, what I'm finding sometimes, is that there is a fear also. A fear of the future, that the future will be a dark future. I was speaking the other day to a young lady in, I think, Leiden University in Holland, and she was telling me that many of her friends do not want to get married. Not because of choices and all, but because they think that if they bring a child into this world, the child will not have a good, decent future because the future is already so dark. So why should I marry and bring a child who will have a miserable life? So apart from other aspects of low birth rates in developed countries, let's say, which Korea is facing, by the way, Japan, US, all of these aging societies, that is becoming another very interesting aspect. I didn't realize that the generations, the youth, many of them are so fearful, afraid, skeptical of the future because of climate change and because of violence in the world and all of those reasons. So there is a lot of stress going on and a lot of conflict. And also, of course, due to the COVID, these stress levels and mental stress, and I think Ari, for example, our colleague from Israel, and many of us have been dealing in issues of mental stress, and we are seeing it's coming up a lot more. So that's the second thing which is happening in this world of today. Now, the third thing which is happening in the world of today is, big picture wise, let's say, terrorism, right? But I will divide this or segregate this into three buckets, because I think what is happening is that we are jumbling too many things in this terminology of what we refer to as terrorism and worldwide terrorism. The conference is happening, prime ministers, presidents, they all are talking about terrorism. But they're mixing up three things. And it is high time that we delineate these three things separately. One is terrorism, that is the terrorist who is already weaponized, who is already carrying a gun or has the ability to take a gun or whatever weapon and go and kill the other. So that is a terrorist, right? It could be any religious-based, any faith-based, but such individuals or transnational groups, even you could say, fine. So that's terrorism. Second is state-related problems of terrorism, especially, let's say, Afghanistan and Pakistan, what we see often, right? That some states where, there is a higher potential for terrorism to breed. So handling in Afghanistan or a Pakistan is different than handling individual terrorists, right? The third thing is radicalization of the mind. See, somebody who becomes a terrorist has to be radicalized first and then pick up the weapons and arms, right? He or she has to reach that point where he or she is convinced that extremism or hatred of the other is the only path ahead for him or her, and therefore now it's time for me to pick up a gun and go and kill the other. So terrorism has these three things. So this is the background. Now I'll quickly dive into what I suggest, propose, or what I'm working on in some of these. See, in terrorism, the world is looking at guns and technology to solve the problems. You see, what all governments are doing, the only method they have is to throw more money into guns, drones, any technologies, okay, and hope to solve the problem. However, technology alone cannot be the answer, especially for radicalization. I'm an engineer myself, so it's not to say that I'm anti-technology. But what I'm saying is that in this context, technology and guns are not the answers to mitigate extremism in the long term in our societies. Now I come to some prescription, if I were to say, and what we are actually working on. The only way ahead to reduce extremism in our societies and hatred in our societies in the long term is a curriculum in the schools. All schools, religious, public, private, whichever schools, all schools in the world. A curriculum, a compulsory kind of a curriculum for all children from age 5 to 15. Okay, I'm assuming that all children can be in school, which itself is not the truth, but assuming that. So all children from age 5 to 15 in all schools all over the world should have compulsory education on compassion, respect for the other, respect for diversity, and a philosophy of live and let live. This curriculum can be, should be in a fun way. I mean, for a 5-year-old kid, it could be some games. For a 7-year-old kid, it could be again some games and certain experiences and all. It is not to be, like, okay, you sit down and you're lecturing the kids. No, it should be a fun curriculum. The pedagogy, the style of teaching should evolve. We are smart enough now, have learned enough now, content development and learning, how learning takes effect. So such a curriculum will be the only path ahead in the future. Now, Gandhian principles. Okay, I'm no expert on Gandhi. I mean, of course, other than absorbing Gandhi seems to be in the air in India for us, right? And so, but yes, I can imagine, and very well, there are Gandhian principles directly involved in this method, that all children be given inputs, we can just call it even indoctrination. It is the programming of the mind. There's a saying, the child is the father of man. What I learned as a child is what makes me today. The child in me is the father of me, who I am today. Okay. The other advantage of such a curriculum would be, again, less bullying in schools. One huge aspect of children and for parents also in today's society, and which again causes mental stress, right? So much takes away your peace of mind, because Gandhi, fundamentally, if I were to look down the line, our objective is peace of mind of individuals and peace in societies and peace across nations. So with such a curriculum, there will be less bullying in schools. So less bullying in schools. And when these children become the adults of tomorrow, less number of them would perhaps be drawn towards extremism. If as of today, out of 100, maybe, X number get drawn towards extremism, picking up and hatred towards the other. If you've gone through such a curriculum, hopefully you'll have lesser number of adults who are prone towards hatred. Now, in this live and let live, sans frontiers, it is also about not only between man, humankind, it's also about coexistence with Mother Nature. And this is what the pandemic has also reminded all of us. We have to live and let Mother Nature live. Otherwise, Mother Nature won't let us live. So, coexistence is the key. And you see, each word in this is very powerful, I'll say. Sorry. Live and let live. Live in itself is a word. Live a happy life. Live a healthy life. I think Dr. Swaran Singh was talking about sovereign citizens and, doing your, the maximization of your potentials. Live. And especially again after COVID, I think people have become much more concerned with their health and healthy eating and, all of such stuff. Live. The first duty to you yourself, live. Live well. Live healthy. Healthy in body, healthy in mind. And let the other live. And you also live and let me live. That coexistence balance. So that's one, in fact, it's a global campaign that we're running and we're pushing education departments. We know that changes in curriculum are impossible always, but still we are pushing and talking to governments and spreading this idea that live and let live is one thing which all school systems should introduce. And it's happening in some ways, you see. School systems are introducing, classes on mindfulness, compassion, happiness. Here in Delhi, the school system has classes on happiness. In Scandinavia, they've introduced, I think in Denmark, curriculums on mindfulness. Okay. In the US, there's a campaign which goes, kindness is cool. Kindness, I would say, is the new cool. Okay. So all of that around this. So in a sense, the idea would be that with Gandhian principles, and as Dr. Singh, Swaran Singh just mentioned, and the topic is that you're talking creating a cultural community, Gandhian cultural community. What I'm pushing for, or what we are talking, I think is, there should be a global culture of live and let live amongst anyone. So a global culture of live and let live, and that's where the principles and values and examples of Gandhi become so relevant. Now, that's one. The other, if I were to say practical in some senses, is that mankind or womankind, humankind, we live on hope. There was a long study done at the Harvard Business School, I think about 20, 30 years long study, which came down that what is the fundamental thing that humans need? We need hope. You sleep in the night, hoping to get up in the morning. There has to be hope. Now, giving that example, as I was telling you about earlier, the lady in Leiden University, she has no hope, or her friends have no hope in the future. And that's why they think that they will not marry, because why bring somebody into a dark world? Hope. We need to spread hope in this world. And towards hope, we have another campaign going on which we are running, which we call, as you've seen, the Lemonade Party. The idea of the Lemonade Party is simple. I mean, many of us may know this idiom very often used, when life gives you a lemon, make lemonade, right? That when life gives you a difficult situation, something totally out of the blue, try and make the best out of that. That's what this idiom means. Life gives you a lemon, make lemonade, right? Now, so the Lemonade Party that we have and we are spreading is, it's not a political party. It is a global motivational movement for personal, family, social peace and happiness, and to develop a mindset, a culture of a can-do attitude to solve the challenges which are facing planet Earth today. Right? We got many challenges, many situations. I mean, everything right now you can say, there are challenges. There are many, many lemons all around us in our personal lives, in our societies, and amongst and between nations. We have to have an attitude, a mindset, a global culture of creatively being able to get out of these challenges. We have to have hope out there. Okay. So the lemonade party, I mean, what I find oftentimes is that you see there are many idioms which we use daily in our lives, but we have to infuse power and energy into those simple words. What Gandhi would say, like non-violence or many such principles of Gandhian values, we use those words, but do we realize the power of those words? So what we have to do is infuse power and energy in the words so that it brings about a change in thoughts. So therefore, I mean, the idea of a lemonade party is, make lemonade if life gives you a lemon. So that's more or less it. I'll just end by putting in two more words. By the way, yes, thank you very much for the introductions, sir. Yes, we've been working with Korea a long while and also with other countries, Japan especially also, US also. And so the problems of Korea, which Dr. Lakhvinder and some of us often discuss, we understand some of those, like stress, age, demographic, I mean, aging society, and many such aspects. And then peace on the Korean Peninsula. I'm just happy or humbled to share with you that the Winter Olympics of 2024, which will be held in the Gangwon province of South Korea, the organizing committee of that Winter Olympics has set up a subcommittee on peace diplomacy. And they've invited me to be a member of that committee on peace diplomacy for maybe whatever discussions and all to discuss about peace in the Korean Peninsula. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to share my thoughts. Really look forward to brilliant speakers, brilliant minds, scholars, practitioners, researchers, just interested folks who are all here today on this afternoon with a core idea that the world of tomorrow should be one where we can coexist with peace of mind between individuals across this planet, 7 billion of us if we can, and with Mother Nature coexist, and have hope and spread hope that the tomorrow can be a better tomorrow. Whatever it be, let us overcome the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sachdev. And as we had discussed right at the beginning, we will have the panelists giving their perspectives initially, and at the end, we will like to have a very, very interactive session, engrossed interactive session. In fact, as Dr. Sachdev pointed out about the curriculum and other issues, I also like to share at this juncture, Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti has been doing this program on non-violent communication, and now it has got a major global traction. No, as I said, we have been doing with a lot of universities across the country. We run a free online course, which a very large number of people, more than 1 lakh participants have already done. It has also been translated in several Indian languages, plus in Kyrgyz language, in Swahili, that is the local African language. That is also something which we need, because when we are talking of hate speech and hate narratives in today's world, non-violent communication is really the answer. Our next panelist in this is Professor Joksam Shin, who has been a former professor and a Gandhian environmentalist from Korea itself. And Professor Joksam Shin is a Daegu-based Gandhian environmentalist, and before joining his ground level movement, he was a professor at the Daekyung University of Business Studies. Along with his environmental work, he's also working as a business consultant in different countries in India, Saudi Arabia, and China. So it would be very interesting to see from the Korean perspective on how he thinks the various Gandhian principles outlined so far could be integrated within the context of the Korean cultural ethos and ideas in schools and universities. Professor Shin Jong-sam.
First of all, I might say I'm really honored to join together with you in this special round of Zoom meeting. And let me start my message. We live on a planet filled with water and air, and such water and air are increasingly polluted and destroying the order of Mother Nature. Good example of destroying order of nature is outbreak of COVID-19. The direct cause of COVID-19 is transmission virus through bat, but airborne virus and water pollution have contributed in part to the outbreak of coronavirus. Corona pandemic is caused by human carelessness of the natural environment. October in 2019, ahead of second round of informal summit talks with Chinese Prime Minister Xi Jinping, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was seen vlogging at the beach in Tamil Nadu. On Twitter, Prime Minister Modi shared a short video of him picking up plastic bottles, plates, and other garbage from a beach outside the Taji Fisherman's Cove Resort and Spa in Mamallapuram. It was very much impressive to me, and such video featuring that global leader takes the initiative and set an inspiring example encouraged me so as for me to contribute myself to be actively engaged in environmental movement. Cleanliness is very important, whether it is our home, workplace, or public places. It's one of the very basic needs of civilized lifestyle. Mahatma Gandhi, the father of India, gave the mantra, cleanliness is godliness. And Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the Swachh Bharat mission, so-called Clean India and Green India, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. Cleanliness and hygiene are not only for our personal belongings or our own homes. We need to make sure to keep our surroundings clean wherever we go. Clean India mission focuses on the eradication of open defecation all over the country, and such efforts have been made for the same since its commencement in 2nd October 2014. As for the statistics published by the government of India on Clean India and Green India mission, more than 100 million toilets have been built during the mission across the country. 36 Indian states have been declared defecation-free, and hence the mission has largely improved the lifestyle of common Indian men. Mahatma Gandhi had a dream of cleaner and healthier India, and he emphasized it time and again during his lifetime. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, which means making India clean and more, is a step towards fulfilling of his beautiful dream of the father of India. Shri Narendra Modi himself initiated the Clean India drive at the beginning of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan to spread awareness about the mission and its importance. Picking up the broom to clean the dirt, making Clean India and Green India a mass movement across the nation, the Prime Minister said, people should neither be litter nor let others litter. I make it a rule to bring with me garbage bag on the way from to nearby mountain for morning exercise, so as for me to pick up rubbish, plastic bottles, cigarette package, and face mask rolling on the ground. I mean, I do strive to participate voluntarily and actively in the environmental movement, so-called blogging, which was initially initiated from Sweden. Here, I would like to focus on how to dispose of masks and protect the environment. I would like to raise the alarm because a number of used masks started appearing on beaches and on grounds. I would like to speak out alarming one that this residue is a threat to human life, marine life, and wildlife habitats. Even more concerning is that in addition to pollution, this waste may increase the spread of the new coronavirus. What is how to dispose of masks correctly? The World Health Organization recommends discarding them in a correct rubbish bin immediately after use and not reusing them. What is the correct bin? Mask and other disposable material that are used to contain the pandemic, such as gloves, must not be disposed of in the recycling bin with packaging, cans, etc., or with organic waste. Do not throw them away with general household rubbish. At the same time, I would like strongly to emphasize, don't forget to discard. Use the mask with the strap cut off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor. Good points that you have made, very practical ones. Next panelist in our discussion is Professor Vithya Jain. Professor Vithya Jain is a very senior Gandhian scholar from India. She has been the principal of the Maharani College in Jaipur, that is one of the largest women's college in Asia, whole of Asia. Also, she is she's part of the International Peace Research Association. She is the convener of the Non-Violence Commission in the International Peace Research Association. She has written widely at a global level on different dimensions of Gandhi. And also, for your information of all, Gandhi Smriti does this international e-dialogues very regularly, especially with the pandemic situation. And Professor Vithya Jain has been our mentor and guide to bring in international experts on peace together in one platform. And in fact, I recently had the opportunity to put together a book of dialogues with eminent global practitioners of peace, and she actually helped us in that. Professor Vithya Jain, please, the floor is all of yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Namaskar. It's an absolute pleasure to be with such a distinguished panel. And thank you so much, Professor Lakhvinder Singh ji, for this initiative. I mean, I really appreciate. Thank you, Veda, for having me here. And let me confess, Gandhi is as relevant today as it was never before. Because the fundamental problems with which the whole of the humanity is struggling, the fundamental problems of violence, agony, hatred, the increasing rift of poor and rich, environmental degradation, attacks on the dignity of women, Mother Nature, they have all brought Gandhi into center stage. And believe me, the two prominent model of development who claim that they are going to serve people have failed tremendously. So here is a third model of development, which is pro-people, which is pro-poor, which is pro-kisan, which is pro-worker, which is pro-mother nature, and which is pro-women. So Gandhian model of development, Gandhian alternatives, Gandhian values have become very, very globally acceptable. The intellectuals of the world are giving a serious thought to this third model of development, which is the sustainable model of development, which is the appropriate model of appropriate technology model of development, which serves the demands of ordinary people, which really worries about the problems of Mother Nature. Because as Professor Swaran Singh and Ravindraji has been talking at length about the environmental degradation which has happened, and especially COVID has really taught us that we are only a part and parcel of this whole cosmos. But what we are doing, just because you are born as a human being, you do not have the right to encroach everybody's spaces, any species spaces. And we have been doing this. Lot of killing, lot of non-vegetarianism has happened. We have started killing animals, started eating wild animals, and that is why the pandemic has come to us. And believe me, this is not the last pandemic. There are many more to follow if we do not behave ourselves. Dalai Lama has written somewhere that, you know, it is a caution to human beings that behave yourself, otherwise Mother Nature can even decide to live without human beings, because Mother Nature has much more wonderful eco life to look at. So I mean, this life is, this earth democracy is a circle. It is not a pyramid where you are riding on each other. It is interdependence, it is mutual respect and love, for what Rabindraji was talking about. I'm reminded of one liner of Gandhi which is very near to my heart. Gandhi says, I am there for you are, and you are there for I am. We peacefully coexist. We are not individual beings, we are inter beings, we are world beings, we are sons and daughters of one God. And this interdependence is not only among humans, but birds, animals, rivers, lakes, mountains, we all live with each other. And what we have done as human beings, who are the wisest children of this Mother Nature, have been just doing just the reverse what they were expected to do. And that is why I think Gandhi has a role to play. We have to bring Gandhi into center stage. I'm so happy that Lakhvinder Singh ji is thinking of how to inculcate, how to propagate, how to popularize these Gandhian values. What are Gandhian values? Gandhian values are values of love, or values of care, values of compassion, you know, values of looking after each other, nurturing, mothering. These are values which Gandhi has been talking. I mean, if you read Gandhi's two seed books, his autobiography and his Hind Swaraj, you would come to know that Gandhi doesn't differentiate among anything, not even amongst, you know, living and non-living things. The respect and dignity which he gives to women, because I'm really worried about this dignity of women, her security, especially in India, what's happening. So these are the values where, you know, if I just emphasize 2, 3, 4 values which are very important. The first one, about which Professor Ravindraji has talked about at length, the whole value of, you know, harmony. Life is in harmonious coherence arrangement. It is not competition, it is not greed, it is not becoming more bigger and wealthier than other, but it is living in coherence with each other. If you would only be happy if I am happy. If I am hungry, how you can, you know, just, and that is what's happening. People are just accumulating and like anything. And that is why Gandhi gives the value of non-possession. He says that non-possession is a higher value than non-violence. Non-killing is a higher value than you know, any other value. So this harmonious relationship, Gandhi gives the whole theory of oceanic circle. I am just a drop in the ocean. I'm very important. I'm the nuclei of the ocean, but I'm important until and unless I am living in this ocean. If you just send me out of the ocean, I'm nothing. So I have to understand this harmonious relationship, which is very, very important. And when this individual, the nuclei, is important, then I really, well, what Gandhi says, you have to address this individual. So this is the second utmost value, that's empower, enhance this individual, because Gandhian solutions lie in individual. You can do anything. You can do a lot of, systemic and legal reforms, but until and unless you design a new individual, a new citizen, a new man, a new women, nothing can happen. So Gandhi visualizes this most empowered, sovereign, self-sufficient, self-respectful, dignified individual, because Gandhian solutions lie there. So he gives this 11 woe, the whole concept of truth, non-violence, non-possession, all more. He creates a moral man who is much bigger and higher than this, and we need it today, because we have been doing systemic changes at all levels. If I talk about women's issues, there are several big, laws in vis-a-vis women's problems, but nothing has happened because we are not addressing this man and women. So Gandhi says we have to create a moral man, a man who believes in non-violence, who believes in truth, who believes in tolerance, who believes in non-possession and non-untouchability and all that. That is how this man can happen. And this individual, this sovereign individual would reap the way of, would just open the way for this sustainable model of society, which is Swadeshi. Because now I'm reminded of this, because the whole globalization process is really doing a lot of harm to the societies like India, like, because Lakhvinder Singh was asking this, the economic competition, material growth has taken away everything. But Gandhi says we have to respect these cultural local entities, because at the level of local communities, at the cost of local aspiration, how can you build a global world? So there should be a balance between local and global. There should be a balance between technology and a culture. There should be balance between human values and economic development. So Gandhi comes into that when he says you have to look after your, because we have local talents, we have local resources, we have our own solutions to our problems, like the solution of water conservation, because these natural resources are limited, they are unrenewable. So Gandhi talks of smart uses of natural resources. Gandhi says that nature has enough to fulfill everybody's need, but it has very little to fulfill anybody's greed. So stop this, overuses of material things, overuses of natural resources, of wasting water. So water conservation, plantation, believe in mother climate and mother nature is very, very important. So Gandhi talks of Gandhi's symbol of charkha. Charkha is not, charkha is just a small spinning wheel. Gandhi knew that he's not going to clothe the whole nation by just spinning this charkha, but it is symbol of self-sustenance. It is symbol of self-dependence. So, and Gandhi believed in symbols. He believed in symbols. These symbols were very, very important, whether it was Namak Satyagraha, whether it was Gandhi Topi, Gandhi's Jhadu, Gandhi's charkha, they are very, very important. So Gandhi says that minimize your needs. You have to minimize your needs. The way the market is teaching us to maximize the needs is really very, very harmful. Market and media are the two biggest culprits of today's world. They teach me to waste, to just artificially increase my demands, because they have to consume the things which they are putting in. Gandhi's belief in physical labor, the ashram vyavastha about which the earlier Professor Swaran Singh were talking about. Physical, Gandhi says the person who doesn't do physical labor and eats is a thief. So physical labor is very, very important. Ashram means where there is shram, where I do my own, whether it is cleanliness, cooking my own food, planting my own things, eating whatever is grown in my local vicinity. Gandhi used to walk like for 13, 14 kilometers a day. He used to just get up at 3:30 a.m. He would be doing cycling. He would be doing, swimming and walking so much. So now you are talking about 10,000 steps and all. And Gandhi was in favor of eating very, very less, because he said that food is only for the sustenance of my body. It is not for the satisfaction of my palate. So he gives the principle of non-taste. He gives the principle of celibacy, of brahmacharya. Controlling my needs and my senses is very, very important. It is just antithetic to what today's world, today's market, today's media are teaching to us. And now because simplicity just can be a fashion. And I'm reminded of, there are several movements which have begun from several Gandhian movements which talk about this voluntary poverty, voluntary simplicity. I'm a rich, but I choose to live like a poor. I have a Mercedes car, but I would ride cycle for 2 days. I would say no to technology for 2 days. I'll just go and sit with nature, go and sit with my elders, my parents and grandparents, which is very, very important, because we are totally surrounded by artificial things. And Gandhi was against this artificial intervention in human life. That is why he was against doctors, he was against lawyers, because what lawyers do, they just they increase the conflicts instead of resolving them. And Gandhi believed in dialogue. Gandhi was a dialogistic philosopher. Gandhi believed in compromise. Gandhi says, if I say two contradictory things, you go by my second opinion, because I have just changed my opinion on the basis of my experiments, on the basis of my experience. So here is a man who is so revolutionary, so progressive, who chooses to learn each and every day. Even on his day of assassination, he was learning Bangla language. So here is a man who is a constant learner, constantly, improving and changing every day. So Gandhi believes in the way of life. He was against artificial intervention because he had great faith in this human being. So here I just want to come to my last point, because I'm a teacher and I believe that we have to enlighten the minds of, because the topic of today's thought, how to do it. So I want to come here, how to do it. We have to go to the youth. We have to approach to the students. We have to go to the educational institutions. We have to bring those students out of the school walls to the communities. There should be an interaction between the community, the leaders like Lakhvinder Singh, just going to the institutions of Korean universities and Korean colleges and talking to this young mind who are 16, 17, 18 old boys and girls, and believe me, they would listen to you. They are ready to change. They are the change makers. They are the peace soldiers. If violence can be taught, non-violence can also be taught. We can really teach them. So by just addressing this individual on which Gandhi had full faith, addressing this intellect, the emotion, the spiritual strength of this human being is very, very important. Character building, believe in alternative sources of energy, simplification and changing in lifestyles, because today's individual, we are the leaders, we are the elder generation. What we will show them the path, they will follow us. So there is a time, when these changes can be done. This can go into curriculum, or this can go into one-to-one talks, maybe these kind of webinars and seminars. But transformation in the mindset of youth, of the students, is the key of future world, is the key of future society, which is peaceful, which is just, which is based on love, compassion, harmony, and non-violence. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity and listening me. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vithya, ma'am. It has always been a pleasure listening to you and understanding things from you and expanding one's knowledge. In fact, you have rightly pointed out on the essence of going to the students and talking to them, and in the context, in a practical context, when we are talking of Gandhian values, are very important aspect, because as we learn, we know that there are so much of conflict in the school systems and the college systems. One way is to understand the Gandhian approach to non-violent conflict resolution. In fact, for information of all, we just had a training program of honorable judges here, and they wanted me to have a session on the Gandhian approach to mediation. And when we were talking on the traditional approaches to mediation and how the Gandhian model is a different from the traditional model of mediation. So there are so many different possibilities that I think we can work when Dr. Lakhvinder Singh ji can actually, he needs to, and he will have to encapsulate. We are getting so many ideas on what to start and how to start, especially in the context of South Korea. Our next honorable panelist for the program is Mr. Ari Bloach, and he is a social activist and an entrepreneur, and he has over a decade of work here in India, and currently the director and producer of this online media at Zumolok, and is also the founding member of the Men for Change, a social impact group in Israel. He is a certified council leader and an active in areas of co-parenting and amicable divorce, health, healthy masculinity, and further understanding and reconciliation between men and women. And he is based in Israel at this stage. And it would be interesting to listen to Mr. Ari Bloach, and with his practical ideas on what are the different values that we can start with to propagate in the Korean context. Mr. Baloch.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to my friend Sri Rabinder Singh ji for inviting me, and for Professor Lakhvinder Singh for also extending the invitation. And all the panelists, it's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. I am not a Gandhian scholar. I do not live in South Korea. So what can I contribute? Well, I am a member of humanity. I live in this world of ours, and I believe in universal values. I believe in humanity, and I also believe in well-being, conservation, and many of the other ideas that are mentioned. I appreciate very much what Professor Swaran Singh mentioned about the idea of custodianship and being trustees. Indeed, in this world of ours, perhaps we could have
Please mute yourself. Ma'am, please mute yourself, ma'am. Vithya, ma'am, please mute yourself.
Maybe host could do that. Thank you. Apologies. So yes, I mean, we are but custodians of this place, trustees of this little sphere that we live on. And also what Rabinder ji mentioned, the example of the woman who didn't want to have children because what type of a world would she be bringing those children into? We have a responsibility for future generations. I mean, my own daughter, she is a teenager. She is very much concerned about the environment, and in her way being an activist in various ideas. And she often says to me, you, meaning the grown-ups, you just don't understand, you just don't get it, and we need to do this, and we need to recycle, and we need to conserve, and we need to do all these various things. Which, by the way, also speaks to the point of education and the importance of education, etc. So with that, maybe just some thoughts I can contribute. The ideas that resonate, many ideas, of course, resonate. The issue of leading by self-example and discipline, discipline in mind, discipline in body, self-sacrifice and devotion to higher causes. We are much larger than our own selves. We are members of society, the analogy of the ocean, of course. Dialogue, peaceful dialogue, non-violent dialogue, and also the notion of community, of course. And of course, working persistently and diligently towards these causes and goals. And once again, as Professor Jain had just mentioned, the issue of constant learning, both self-learning and also in education. It's interesting. I'm a practitioner of what we call counsel. Counsel is a method of group discussion and sharing of ideas in a particular way, and also a practitioner of nonviolent communication, which you may know by its founder, Marshall Rosenberg. And it's very interesting in that these two methods further understanding, further cooperation, collaboration in community, between members of the community. Because, we have a saying, we say that our opinions divide us, but our stories unite us. What does that mean? In the practice of counsel, and I won't get into it, but in essence, what it means is that in a group discussion, it's very, very different than having an agenda. Okay, we must decide on this, we must debate this. No, it's a different type of a setting. So in the storytelling narrative method, we talk, we speak, we share stories about a particular issue. And through the sharing of shared human experiences, we weave a web of community. We weave a web of, the fact that, like I said, our opinions may divide us, but our stories, in so far as we are all very similar, what is similar in our basic needs, in our desires, not selfish, desires, not market-driven desires, but compassion, love, all of these things. So to work and implement these ideas through fostering of communication, through fostering of communities, and personally I'm involved in both actual, today we say, physical communities, but we also have the realm of virtual online communities. And it's very interesting how the world is evolving today to be able to foster interaction, collaboration, in the online world. I mean, here we are having an online discussion, people in different countries, different time zones, sharing ideas. And then what? And then we take that into our local communities, and it starts what? It starts from self. It starts from family. Then it goes into our community. It could be a school. It could be our workplace, and then grows and grows in circles to the extent that we can influence. At the end of the day, I very much believe that we should all practice, as Gandhiji said, to be the change that we wish to see in the world. So these are some thoughts of mine. I again want to thank the esteemed members of the panel and conveners, and encourage you and wish you all the success in implementing the Gandhian principles in South Korea and for the greater benefit of humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bloach. It was very good listening to you with some very practical ideas. We have also now with us Mr. Kim Shelo Ho, who is a fellow of the Asian Institute, South Korea. Mr. Kim Shelo Ho, if you are there.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity for joining this program.
Mr. Kim,
So
I can't
first
see
of
your
all-
video. Can you on your camera?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So I'd like to thank you, dear Dr. Singh and your fellow members. And first of all, I really got to know the Gandhism. For me, when I was in the Gandhism forum for the first time in Korea, was held for about 6 or 7 years ago. I participated in my two kids, with my two kids. Then I didn't expect much because I was not interested in at all of the Gandhi like philosophy and their thought. But since then on, now is pandemic. Since the pandemic is getting more important than anything else. So because of the now, as you see, there are a lot of societal problems in Korea, like suicide rate is high, is increasing, is less birth rate and unemployment rate hike. And there are a lot of societal issues we are struggling in Korea. So I really, now it's good time to talk about Gandhism. And also, I would like to extend my deep gratitude for my colleague, Dr. Singh, because here I observed many things while I was working with him, and Professor Emmanuel is associated with the Asia Institute. His unyielding support, not only Gandhism, but also a lot of his idea to take our society as a better country. So now to conclude, so for me, it is very nice time to talk with all of you, and I heard many insightful ideas from you. And now I'm not prepared much. Now I'm excursion with my family matters. So anyway, I really appreciate all of you, and this is the time we will spend together would be very valuable. I believe. Thank you for further discussion later. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now one of the most important moment of this dialogue, because we have got some really good perspectives from the esteemed panelists so far, right from Professor Swaran Singh to Professor Vithya Jain to Dr. Robin Sachdev, Mr. Ari Bloach, and Professor Shin Jong-sam. What is important now is to bring together and encapsulate all these very vital points that has come in this discussion so far, and try to explore on what could be the different approaches, actual approaches to introduce different dimensions of Gandhian values amongst the young people of South Korea and other citizens. So now our speaker would be Dr. Lakhvinder Singh ji. He has been the person who has been at the forefront of taking this whole initiative forward, the Gandhian cultural community. He's also with the Asian Institute and a very erudite scholar. I keep on reading his writings. He has recently written a beautiful piece on as part of the 152nd birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi in one of the Korean papers, and why Gandhi is relevant not just for Korea but the entire world. So it's so important to understand the practical dimensions of how he intends to take this whole challenge forward. It's a very big challenge. So, but we at Gandhi Smithies are ready to, help in any way as possible. But here he will be the person, I think he is in the right at the front. And so we would love to listen to him on how he wishes to take this whole initiative forward. Dr. Lakhvinder Singh ji.
First of all, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to begin with my sincere thanks to the Gandhi Smriti for co-joining with me to organize this important seminar, even at such short notice. As you know, even 1 week ago, there was no idea that we are doing such a seminar. So I just came in, and with your support, we could develop into such a meaningful discussion among our friends. So first of all, my sincere thanks to your director, who supported us very, very strongly and warmly. And I also want to thank my all panelists who came to join me today with such a short notice and with such a extensive, such a excellent presentations. Especially I want to thank Professor Swaran Singh ji. He's my mentor. When I was in JNU, he was my senior, 3-4 years senior. We are students together. He was doing 34th year PhD, I was 2nd year PhD. So he taught me how to write article, how to do discussion. He was person who published my first article. So he's just like my elder brother, my mentor. He's almost everything for me. And I learned Gandhiji from him. He's my kind of from where I started is from him. So I want to thank him for everything he did for me and for us today. His support today, his appearance today is a big boost to us. I think if we can enjoy the support of scholars like Professor Swaran Singh, then nobody can support us to promote Gandhian values in Korea. I also want to thank you, my dear friend, Professor Vithya Satyagrahas. He's very kind to me. He's always with me and always supporting me. Whenever I propose him any ideas, any suggestions, he always says, let's do it. Let's do it. So he's a kind of moving force for me, which keeps me going all the time. And thank you so much, Ravinderji, for your support. And I also want to thank you, my Professor Korean friend, Mr. Shin, Professor Shin. He's also very kind. You will not believe that he prepared his comments even only today also. Yesterday there's no idea that he will make a presentation. So he's so kind to me that he prepared his presentation such a small notice, such a small time. But it was excellent presentation. I liked very much. There's one person who do have no chance to speak, but he's Professor Kim Che Hung Kim. He's my very good friend, and he's a very good colleague. He always support me. He lived in Korea. He lived in for 4 years. Now he's doing a very good business. So if he chance to, we'd also like to invite Mr. Chan Hung Kim to speak sometime next time and give us his view, what he think about India-Korea cooperation. And finally, I would like to thank my Mr. Kim for joining today. He's today vacationing in his faraway place from here, but he really wanted to be part of this special event. So he agreed to say a few words. He's my fellow. He's my colleague at his institute, and he has supported me in many events. So it's no surprise that he agreed to support me today when we needed him today. So he is very strong Gandhian. His heart is Gandhian. When you meet him, you cannot feel that he's Gandhian, but if you talk to him, you have some discussion with him, you'll feel how strongly he believes in Gandhian values and Gandhi. And last but not least is my young leader, Mr. Kisle Kumar. He's a moving force behind everything. He's very young, but when you talk to him, you can feel the energy immediately. Immediately, you can feel how powerful he is, and each and every words give you energy, give you meaning. He has a lot of ideas, a lot of commitment to the cause of Gandhiji. So I sincerely believe that under his leadership, we will try to achieve something meaningful in Korea. He has made Korea his home. I sincerely believe that as he grow along with his career, he will devote his time and energy to promote soft power of India. Gandhi is the best of us, and by representing Gandhi, we are promoting India and Korea. So I think under his leadership, we will be able to achieve much. Now, having said that, let me talk about the takeaway. What we can take away from today's discussion. I think there are a lot of things which we can take away from today's discussion. As we started with Professor Swaran Singh, he was quite comprehensive, quite detailed about his thesis, what we can be done in Korea. He gave us a very detailed presentation, detailed view, comprehensive view. How can we help Korea improve its economic and social situation in Korea? But the most important point, which I think, which attracted my attention, was that when he said Korea needs to clean his soul, cleanse of soul. That's the most important point which touched my heart. I think Korea's soul has been corrupted by economic growth. Everything has been forgotten. Everything matters now in Korea is economic growth. How you can make more money? How you can grow more rich? So the extreme greed, corporate greed has corrupted Korea's soul. That is why we have so many problems, so many tensions, so many issues there. So when Swaran Singh was talking about cleaning the soul, I think the real answer of Korea's social problems, and economic problem. So please take away from Mr. Professor Swaran Singh's talk was that first thing first we clean our soul. And who's better than Gandhiji? How to do that? I think if you look at Gandhiji can tell us how to live a good life, how to live a balanced life, how to live a moral life. Korea needs Gandhiji like never before. Time is that somebody has to tell Korea that, wait a minute, something has gone wrong. We are human beings. We are not robots. We are living on. We have a soul. We have to clean it. We have to reconnect with our creator. Until we don't reconnect with our creator, there's no way we can survive anymore. So what Professor Swaran Singh was telling us was very important. First thing first, let's recognize ourselves. Let us acknowledge that we are not robots. We are not machines. We are living human beings. We have a soul, and our soul has been corrupted by corporate forces, by greed, and we have to clean it. How can we clean it? We can clean it by focusing on God, by focusing on restraining our needs. Until we don't restrain our needs, we cannot achieve success. So that's a very important point which I wanted to say. Coming to my dear colleague Ravindra Sachdeva, I think the most important point which he always make is how to make the whole society love each other. He always talk about live and let live. I think Korea needs that point more than ever. Social alienation, social tension in Korea has reached point of no return. More and more Korean students are killing themselves. There's no Korean students have to learn that point that there's no alternative. There's no alternative. Coexistence is the only way out. So when Professor Dr. Ravindra Sachdeva mentioned that point, it touched my heart. I think that's the way forward. Korea needs that philosophy, that way of life, where we teach our children that the only way forward is live and let live. So until we don't take that point, Ravindraji, there's no option, there's no future. That point is very critical for Korea, and sooner the Korea take that point from us, the better for us. I think the most important point which Professor Shin was trying to make was very important for Korea as well as for India, is that cleanliness is God. That you have to clean your environment, you have to keep to clean your cities, your streets, your forest. Until you don't clean, dirtiness comes. Once dirtiness is around you, dirtiness comes to your mind. So to keep your mind clean, you have to clean your environment, because it is directly connected with each other. So when he go to morning walk, he clean the forest, he clean the street by himself. That's that kind of dedication for the community, that kind of dedication for the society is very important. All of us, we must show that kind of commitment, that kind of value system if we want to live. So when in the morning he leave, he take a garbage bag with himself, and whenever he sees some litter in the street, in the mountain, he always pick up and bring it home and try to dispose it. Now he was trying to make a very important point about the mask. Mask is a very serious threat. When we use mask, we just forget that millions of people are using masks now. Who will dispose them? Where they will dispose? Nobody's asking that question. So today, Mr. Professor Jain asked a very important question. We are carelessly using masks, but nobody knows how they will be disposed and how they will hurt us. So we are creating a new crisis. We're trying to solve the one crisis, we are trying to create a more bigger crisis. So we have to use masks and other things in a very limited way, the lesser the possible, because otherwise we can end up creating more bigger crisis for ourselves. So we have to pay proper attention to his ideas, to his suggestions, that creating this. This awareness for a cleaner environment is very important among the members of the society. The ground level work he's doing in the Korea is something we can learn in India. In India, we never try to clean our street ourselves. We have to look at the bigger picture. In India, we don't have a culture of taking a garbage bag in our pocket. Whenever we pick up a garbage, we pick up. This is what we can learn from Korea. This is what we can learn from Korean people. Korean streets are different from Indian streets because we don't care. We have to take a garbage bag in our pocket. Whenever we go street, there's some litter around. Okay, let's pick it. So each and every individual start picking garbage. Then we can fulfill the dream of our Prime Minister, Shri Modi ji, that India can become clean. Modi ji is a dreamer. He's trying to trying to clean the environment, but he alone cannot do anything, cannot do himself. We have to do our job. We have to, each and every one of us, we have to carry the garbage bag in our pocket. Whenever we see the garbage, we have to pick it. So this is what Gandhiji wanted. This is what our Modiji want. This is what we want. So our idea, our suggestions are to how to implement them, how to make it happen. Otherwise, we make big plans. So Professor Singh is a live example. How can we do which needs to be done? So thank you so much for giving us the real lesson how we can improve our environment. Now, coming to Professor Vithya Jain, I think that was an excellent speech, marvelous speech. I have never heard this kind of inspiring, comprehensive take on Gandhiji. She was so comprehensive that almost she covered a very inspiring speech. I think the most important point which attracted my attention when she said natural way of life. I think this is what the Korea needs. Korea is currently living a greed-centered life. We have forgot about natural way of life. Nobody knows what is natural way of life. Nobody knows what is moral man. Everybody knows economic man. In Korea, everybody talk about moral man. So when ma'am said talking about non-possession in Korea, if you say Gandhi talk about value of non-possession, everybody will start laughing at you. So madam was trying to make a very important possession. Gandhi's value of non-possession. But in Korea, everybody want to possess more and more. The more they possess them, the more they hurt themselves. So she taught us, she gave us a very important lesson which we can take home, that real happiness, real meaning of life comes with non-possession. The less we possess, the better. The more we try to live a natural way of life, the better. The more we live a moral life, not economic man, but moral man. So these are very crucial takeaway, which Madam was trying to tell us. I think she was hitting the nail. In Korea, she should come to Korea, I think, and she should live here sometime and try to teach what Koreans are doing wrong. The kind of command, the kind of voice she can speak, she could be a very powerful force, a powerful instrument to bring a change in Korea. Because the conviction which I could felt in her voice is unstoppable. Is a kind of power which we need. And somebody has to say, okay, man, stop it. We need a moral man. We need a non-possession man. We need a natural way of life. And we need to find a third alternative way of life. So this kind of problem is that today there's no leader in Korea who can stand up to Korean government, to Korean corporates, and say, oh man, stop it. You're leading us to hell. So you are leading us to hell. Until we don't stop it, there's no future. So that kind of take is needed, but unfortunately, there's no one in Korea who can say it strongly. So we need a leader like ma'am who can say with such a conviction, such a powerful force that Korea is going, everything is going wrong. Until we don't do it, there's no future for Korea. No future for Korea. So, ma'am, thank you so much. If I didn't know that you will be speaking with such moral force, otherwise I could have invited my more Korean speaker. They should listen to you. They should pay attention to you. Then I think Korea will know what they are doing wrong. So usually they ask me, sir, tell us. I'm teaching in university, so they ask me, sir, tell me what we are doing wrong. What we are doing wrong. I think you answer the question. You answer the question what Koreans are doing wrong. And until Korea not do the mid-course correction, there's no future for Korea. I think so. Thank you, ma'am, so much for your strong and timely intervention. I think it's very important lesson which we could take away from today's lecture. Now coming to my friend from Israel, Mr. Ari Bloach, I think he made a very important point, which works for Korea very well. He said, I'm a member of a community. That's what we need. That's what we in Korea need. Because in Korea, there's a lot of social innovation. Nobody talks to nobody. I live in a building, even my neighbor don't know me, who I am. I'm foreign, still my children, nobody talks to nobody. This kind of social innovation, social aloofness, there's nothing like a member of a community. Everybody is him to himself. So there's no, he was talking about human values, human virtues, but in Korea, nobody talking about human virtues. Nobody. So the message he is trying to take is a real need of the hour. Until Korea don't listen to this kind of talk, this kind of voices coming from the abroad, Korea cannot answer questions. We are human beings. We must love our neighbors. We have to talk to neighbors. We know their worries, their concerns, their children. But in Korea, there's no concept of humanity, no concept of human values. Everybody is up to himself, only economic values. Until this kind of social nation, that is why they have so much society, such a high level of society. Maybe Korea is one of the highest society. Why? Because nobody cares about nobody. No humanity. If you are sick, you are sick. You can call ambulance, but your neighbor will never come out of home and ask you, oh, what happened to your son? What happened to your mom? No, you will never ask. And they will keep pretending, they will keep living a life as nothing happened. There will be death in your house, but then your neighbor will keep living his life as nothing happened. As nothing happened. You live there, but they don't care. This kind of aloofness, is destroying Korea. Until we come back to humanity, come back to human values, there's no alternative. There's no option that Korea can live. Korea can survive another 10 years. Now, if you read my article, if you read my discussion, I openly say that Korea, many of my journalistic colleagues don't want to accept. Sometimes they get angry with me. I say Korea is going through the social economic meltdown. I use this meltdown. I say currently we are in the meltdown, but they agree with me. Sometimes they fight with me. Some of my university colleagues fight with me, but I know Korea is in the meltdown. Somebody has to say Korea has been meltdown. Because just because it's not happening to me, it's happening in the society, it's a problem is very serious. Until we don't solve this kind of problem that we take from Gandhiji, there's no alternative. No alternative. This is very important. And to my dear colleague, Mr. Kim, he's our fellow at this institute, and he is one of the very few Koreans intellectuals who openly accept, yes, we have a social problem, we have an economic problem. In Korea, 99% people don't want to accept, especially Korean politician, Korean intellectuals, Korean professor, don't want to accept that we have a crisis. All of them are in denial. All of them are in denial. They never accept it, that there is something serious going on. So he's one of the very few intellectuals in Korea who openly say, yes, we have a problem at hand. So it takes a courage, a lot of mental, discipline to accept what's wrong in our society. Because in Korea, everybody is in great denial. They pretend everything is okay. Some children are dying, it's okay. Some children are living in Korea, it's okay. Some girls are refusing to marry and refusing to have children, it's okay. It's okay. Everything is okay. So politicians, this corporate greed, this corporate bureaucracy are great denial. They simply don't want to accept. They don't want to accept what is happening in Korea. But truth is that something very seriously wrong in Korea, and we have to accept the fact that fundamentally Korea is going through a very serious economic and social crisis. And Professor, my friend Mr. Kim is one of those leaders who openly accept. So until we have more and more Koreans who come forward and accept, yes sir, we have a problem at hand and we have a crisis at hand. Sometimes when I write an article, Korea is in a crisis, I get so many books from my Korean colleagues, from my foreign colleagues. How can you say it's a crisis? How can you say it's a crisis? They say this is happening in Europe. So what is happening in Europe? It's happening in Korea. It's nothing special. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in USA. So what? It happens. So they say it's natural. When children are dying, it's natural. When girls are refusing to marry, it's natural. When environment is degraded, it's natural. They say it's nothing wrong. They try to spin the whole issue. They try to spin the whole situation in a very, very cunning way. They try to give the example of Europe. They give the example of USA. That because Europe is okay, because Europe has a low birth rate, so Korea has a low birth rate. So your children are dying, so it's okay. So they are very cunning people. They try to confront you that you are wrong. But no, we are followers of Gandhiji. We have the guts to accept the truth. They cannot silence me. Never, because they're trying to for the last 25 years. I speak the truth because the power, the energy, the strength, self-strength comes from Gandhiji. My leaders, my teachers like Singh taught me how to stand firmly. I'm not here just because I have been raised by my seniors like Singh. I was very lucky to give the strength how to develop a self-power, self-conviction. self-cultivation comes from self-morals, living a moral life. So when Koreans, my Western colleagues, my university colleagues, my institute colleagues sometimes try to tell me, don't use this word. But today, as you say, my article last week, I said it. Korea is in social economic crisis. But not many people are ready to accept it. Sometimes they laugh at it. Where do you see the crisis? Where do you see the fire burning in any building? But I know I can see the fire. I can see the death everywhere. I can see the economy going down. I can see everything. If you don't want to see it, it doesn't mean it's not there. So it's there. So we need a brave and courageous Koreans intellectuals who can openly come to the public platform, international platform like today's platform and accept it. Yes, we need Gandhiji. We need a moral society. We need a natural way of life. We need a let and live campaign. We need to campaign. We need to clean our soul. Until Koreans don't accept this kind of moral lessons from Gandhiji, we see this crisis. I call Korea my home because most of my children was born and raised here. So they call Korea home. So Korea is now my home. And when I see this kind of a problem happening in Korea, it hurts me. My heart burns. Everybody knows that I'm basically a professor of international studies. And I focus on defense studies, security studies. So many people ask me, Dr. Singh, how can you do those both things? How can you talk about India-Korea defense cooperation? How can you talk about India-Korea military cooperation? Still, you can talk about Gandhiji. I said, no, I can talk. Because Gandhiji teaches how to live a good life, how to live a God-centered life, how to live economic sustainability, how to have a love with each other. Gandhiji is about us. Gandhiji is about me. Until we don't have Gandhiji, we have nothing. So there's nothing in my mind. I'm India. I love my country. So I want to promote India-Korea cooperation, economic cooperation, defense cooperation, strategic cooperation, whatever. Because we are democracy. We are democracy. We are a rule of law. We struggle very hard to achieve democracy. Korea struggle very hard to achieve democracy. So I want Korea and India to become strong friends because as China rises, threat from the communism is very serious. So we have to become closer friends so that we can meet our international challenges, geopolitical challenges together. I'm not a dreamer. I'm a practical person. I do accept that the rise of China, rise of this balance of power, changing balance of power, poses us a serious threat to our way of life, to our democracy, our rule of law. And Korea has struggled so hard to achieve democracy, to become a civilized nation. Now communism communists are coming, communists are everywhere, but their way of life is not matched with us. We are a highly civilized people. We can't live under such a communist rule. So, but communists are becoming richer, stronger, more and more. So we have to join head together. In my mind, I don't see any contradiction in my mind that Korea and India should join head together to defend our way of life, to defend the democracy, defend the rule of law, defend fundamental human values for which God created this earth. I think this earth was created so that everybody can live and let live. So we have to go back to Gandhiji. We have to go. There's no alternative. Many people say, you never be a Gandhi cap, you never be Gandhi pajama. I tell them that I'm Gandhian from my heart, from my mind. My mind thinks like Gandhiji. I'm not to pretend that I'm a Gandhian dress, Gandhi jacket, Gandhi cap. No. I'm not. By that sense, I'm not Gandhian. But my thought process, what's happening in my mind is Gandhian. Because I know without Gandhi, without a fundamental love for mankind, we are going nowhere. I think that's all from me today. Thank you so much for listening so